I want you to picture a really specific, almost unbelievable scene in your mind right now. Just like imagine a wall, but not just a standard retaining wall. This is a massive, monolithic slab of concrete, as tall as a 16-story building, and it is angled at a terrifying 80 degrees.
Right. It's practically a sheer drop.
Exactly. There are no ledges to stand on, no safety cables, no anchor points.
It's just a brutal, imposing face of human engineering where, a single slip means absolute certain death.
Yeah, absolute death.
Yeah.
So imagine you were standing at the base of this 16-story vertical drop, craning your neck upward. And right there, dead in the middle of this sheer face, a mountain goat is casually walking across it.
Like it's nothing.
Like it's a stroll in the park. It doesn't stumble. It doesn't look panicked. In fact, it stops on a tiny protrusion, like a little bump in the concrete, maybe the size of a coin, turns its body parallel to the ground, and just calmly begins to lick the stone.
It's one of those rare visuals in nature that, well, it completely breaks your cognitive processing the first time you see it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we naturally evaluate the physical world through our own biological limitations, you know? If an environment looks instantly lethal to us, we just assume it must be lethal to everything else.
Right. And then it gets even stranger because a minute later, a second goat appears right next to it. Then a third. Fast forward an hour, and you are looking at an entire herd of goats just hanging on the side of this bare concrete dam, looking like someone literally superglued them there as a prank.
It looks so fake.
It really does. But this isn't a hypothetical thought experiment. There is actual well-documented footage. I think we pulled some incredible clips from Apex Truth showing this exact scene at the Sangino Dam in Italy. And whenever these images circulate online, the public reaction is always identical.
Yeah, people immediately claim it's a digitally altered image.
Or they assume some cruel humans must have lowered the animals down there with ropes for a stunt, right?
Which is an understandable defense mechanism for the human brain. It just looks wrong. But nobody forced them onto that wall. They navigate that lethal incline completely voluntarily, day after day. They turn what looks like a suicidal free climb into a mundane morning commute.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this deep dive is about so much more than just a viral spectacle on an Italian dam. Today, we are exploring the extreme biomechanics that allow an animal to casually defy gravity.
It's just wild.
We are going to look at the hidden evolutionary warfare that pushed them up there and how these creatures perceive the very concept of danger in a way that flips our human understanding of the world completely upside down.
It's a fascinating journey into adaptation. We look at a jagged cliff face and see an uninhabitable void, right?
Yeah.
But they look at that exact same vertical drop and see the ultimate sanctuary.
So, okay, the visual is stunning, but the immediate puzzle is the motivation. Like, when a wild animal puts its life on the line, my baseline assumption is always calories.
Sure.
Food. Right. It must be starving. And there must be some incredibly rare, nutrient-dense plant growing out of a crack in the dam. But the concrete is entirely barren.
It is utterly devoid of caloric value. If they were looking for energy, a concrete dam is mathematically the worst place they could possibly expend their effort.
Which means we have to look past the stomach. They aren't looking for food. They are looking for rock.
Well, more specifically, the salt.
Exactly. They are hunting for the salt and the minerals that are chemically leaching out of the concrete itself. Water slowly pushes these minerals to the surface, turning this vertical wall of terror into a naturally occurring all-you-can-eat mineral buffet.
It's brilliant, really.
It is, but help me understand the urgency here. Why is the craving for salt so intense that an animal will risk a 16-story fall just to lick a wall?
What's fascinating here is the underlying cellular biology at play. This isn't just, a casual preference for a salty snack. It is a severe life-or-death physiological requirement.
Right, life or death.
Oh, absolutely. In the summer months, mountain goats feed almost exclusively on high-altitude, lush, watery vegetation. That diet is great for calories, but it is incredibly deficient in sodium and really rich in potassium.
So they are throwing off their internal chemical balance.
Drastically. The high potassium intake actually causes their bodies to excrete what little sodium they do have. Their cells literally become sodium-starved.
Wow.
Yeah, and without sufficient sodium, their nervous system misfires, their muscles cramp, and they can suffer fatal neurological issues.
Okay, that puts it in a totally different light. It's not a luxury, it's emergency medicine.
Exactly.
It reminds me of like an ultra marathoner who's been sweating for 10 hours straight. If they don't consume electrolyte tablets, their body just shuts down. The goat is experiencing that same systemic crash, but their tablets are embedded in a sheer cliff face.
That's a perfect analogy. And this behavior isn't isolated to one strange dam in Italy. This is a global foundational habit for high-altitude herbivores.
Right, the sources mentioned other places too.
Yeah, in the Canadian Rockies, biologists have observed mountain goats traveling for miles to reach natural salt licks, sometimes spending entire days just grinding their teeth against the stone to extract calcium, magnesium, and sodium.
Yeah, I read that they will lick certain rock faces until the stone physically shines like polished marble, which implies this isn't like a new discovery for them.
Not at all. This is a generational institution. We are talking about migratory routes that have been deeply worn into the earth over thousands of generations.
That's wild.
Adult females guide their young along these precise, invisible topographical maps, teaching them exactly which dangerous cliffs hold the life-saving minerals. I mean, long before humanity even invented the concept of a dam, these animals were mapping the chemical composition of the mountains.
Okay, so the cellular craving explains why. But, desire doesn't suspend the laws of physics.
No, it certainly doesn't.
Let's talk about the actual mechanics of the climb, because my initial assumption was that they must have some kind of biological grappling hook. Like I was picturing raptor claws piercing the rock face.
That's the most common misconception. You look at an 80-degree incline and assume they have to be penetrating the surface to anchor themselves. But they aren't piercing the rock, they are manipulating friction.
Okay, how?
The mountain goat's hoof is just an absolute marvel of hybrid engineering.
Yeah, the sources describe it as having a hard outer edge and a soft inner pad. But wait, let me pause you there, because concrete and granite are essentially giant sheets of sandpaper.
Right.
If the inner pad is soft, wouldn't it just get shredded to pieces under the weight of a 200-pound animal slipping on a rock? How does a soft tissue survive that environment?
It survives through rapid cellular regeneration and a highly specialized physical structure.
Yeah.
So the outer rim of the hoof is made of hard, rigid keratin, similar to human fingernails, but incredibly dense.
Okay.
That hard edge is used to catch microscopic ledges, literally catching on protrusions the size of a pebble. But the inner pad is the real secret. It is convex, spongy, and heavily textured.
So it's not just a flat piece of rubber.
No. It acts more like a high-traction, deformable matrix.
Yeah.
When the goat applies its weight, that soft inner pad compresses and molds itself into the microscopic pits and valleys of the rock's surface.
Oh, wow.
It vastly increases the surface area in contact with the stone, maximizing the coefficient of friction. Furthermore, the hoof is cloven.
Meaning split in two, right?
Yes. The two halves can splay wide apart, allowing the goat to literally pinch a rock or span across an uneven gap.
So where a human wearing a flat-soled hiking boot only has one rigid plane of contact that easily slides off, the goat's hoof is dynamically wrapping around the imperfections of the wall.
Exactly that. But the hoof is merely the contact point. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the entire musculoskeletal system has to support that friction.
Right. You need the muscles to back it up.
A mountain goat has an incredibly robust chest and heavily muscled front shoulders.
I was wondering about that because visually they look very top-heavy. And frankly, I'm still struggling with the sheer physics of not tipping backward.
It seems impossible, doesn't it?
It really does. If you put a heavy animal on a steep wall, gravity dictates that the bulk of their weight wants to peel them off backward into the abyss. How do they counter that?
By fundamentally altering their center of mass. Think of their body not like a standard quadruped, but rather like a hiker wearing a very heavy backpack.
Okay.
If you wear a heavy backpack and lean backward on a steep hill, the weight pulls your shoulders away from the slope and you tumble backward.
You have to lean into the mountain.
Precisely. Goats carry their anatomical backpack incredibly low and strapped tight to their chest. Their center of gravity is pushed so far forward that their weight doesn't pull them away from the cliff. It actually drives the force straight down through their front legs.
Pushing them deeper into the wall.
Yes. Their hind legs act more like stabilizers and propulsion engines, while the front legs are the primary load-bearing anchors.
That makes perfect physical sense. The weight becomes an asset rather than a liability. And the sources also highlighted a secondary physical trait that blew my mind. Their passive locking joints.
Oh yes, the biomechanics of their joints are bizarre compared to ours.
Right, because a human has to constantly fire muscle fibers to maintain a bent knee or a precarious stance.
Which burns energy and causes rapid fatigue.
Exactly. But mountain goats have a joint and ligament structure that can lock into extreme contorted angles without requiring constant muscular tension.
They can freeze on a tiny ledge and just hang there, expending almost zero caloric energy to maintain the pose.
And while they are locked in that pose, they are utilizing what might be their most impressive tool, their visual processing speed.
Absolutely. Their eyes are positioned laterally on their skull, giving them a massive field of view. But the specific shape of their pupils gives them an extraordinary blend of monocular and binocular vision.
Which means in the split second it takes a human climber to look down at their boots, evaluate the rock, and then painfully, slowly look back up to plan their next move.
The goat is doing both simultaneously.
They are mapping the microscopic ledge beneath their front left hoof while simultaneously scanning the horizon for the next 3 jumps. It's why you see these tiny kids goats that were literally born a few hours prior following their mothers onto these sheer drops.
It's incredible. They don't have the experience, but they have the physical hardware to map the terrain instantly.
Yeah.
It looks clumsy for perhaps an hour after birth, and then suddenly this little fragile creature is bounding across chasms that would paralyze a human adult.
Which brings us to a major turning point in this deep dive. Grip, center of gravity, and vision explain the physical capacity to climb.
Right.
But physical ability doesn't eliminate the psychological element of fear.
Right.
Like a human free solo rock climber might have the grip strength and the vision, but they still have to battle intense psychological panic. Why doesn't a mountain goat freeze up in pure terror when looking down a 1,600-foot drop?
This raises an important question. What environmental pressure was so severe that it rewired their amygdala to remove the fear of falling?
Right.
The answer lies in the unforgiving economics of the predator-prey arms race.
We look at that vertical drop and feel profound terror. But here's where it gets really interesting. We are completely projecting our mammalian fear of falling onto an animal that considers flat, open ground to be a death sentence.
Yes.
To a mountain goat, a beautiful, flat alpine meadow is the scariest place on Earth.
Because down in the valleys, on that comfortable flat ground, speed and explosive power are the ultimate weapons. If you are a grazing herbivore on a meadow, you are surrounded by wolves, lynxes, and snow leopards.
Bad news.
Very bad news. Those predators are significantly faster, heavily muscled for sprinting, and possess lethal bite force. On a flat plain, the goat loses that math every single time.
But the moment the terrain tilts upward, the moment the slope hits 50, 60, or 80 degrees, the entire biological power dynamic flips.
It becomes a battle of vertical energy expenditure. A snow leopard is an incredibly powerful, agile hunter. It can physically follow a goat up a cliff for a short distance.
But the leopard's anatomy is built around fast-twitch muscle fibers, right? Designed for massive bursts of speed.
Exactly. Scaling a sheer rock face requires slow, calculated static holds.
So the predator literally burns out.
Exactly. The leopard is burning through massive amounts of oxygen and calories just trying to hold onto the wall, while the goat is utilizing its passive locking joints and specialized hooves to stand there comfortably.
Just waiting them out.
The predator reaches a point of metabolic exhaustion where it either gives up or it falls to its death. The goat doesn't have to outrun the leopard, it just has to walk to an angle where the leopard's biology fails.
It's nature's ultimate high ground advantage. And it's not a localized fluke. The sources point out that millions of years of this specific standoff have created vertical specialists all over the globe.
Oh, absolutely.
Like in Ethiopia, the Walia ibex navigates volcanic cliffs so steep that from the ground they look like insects crawling on a wall.
And in the Himalayas, you have the Baral, or blue sheep, sharing ancient invisible cliff trails with the snow leopards. There is astonishing documentary footage, really cinematic, suspenseful stuff of these chases ending on vertical walls where the leopard and the sheep are just feet apart.
Just staring at each other.
It's a complete stalemate. The sharpest teeth in the world mean absolutely nothing if you don't have the friction to step forward.
And the evolutionary solutions aren't just limited to hooves. I was fascinated by the South American viscachas, which look like, giant chinchillas navigating loose rock screes. But the most surprising example was the hyrax in Africa.
The hyrax is a fantastic example of convergent evolution. They are small, furry mammals that live in rocky outcroppings to escape eagles and leopards.
But they do not have cloven hooves.
No, they don't.
Right, so how does an animal that looks like a giant guinea pig climb a sheer rock face without the keratin edge we talked about?
They utilize a completely different physical mechanism, fluid dynamics.
Okay, break that down for us.
So the bottom of a hyrax's paw features a thick, rubbery pad packed with specialized sweat glands. When they climb, these glands secrete a sticky fluid The moisture allows the soft pad to create a literal seal against the rock.
Like a wet suction cup.
Precisely. It creates negative pressure. As they press down, the moisture seals the edges, and they can scale near vertical, smooth boulders that would defeat even a mountain goat.
That is just wild.
Nature found multiple distinct engineering solutions to the exact same problem: how to manipulate friction to escape predators.
So these animals have spent millions of years perfecting these biomechanical cheats for their rocky, isolated environments. But in the grand timeline of the Earth, human infrastructure is basically a blink of an eye.
Right.
What happens when these ancient biological programming loops abruptly collide with modern engineering? We already talked about the Italian dam acting as an accidental mineral lick.
The interception of ancient instinct and modern infrastructure creates highly unusual and often hazardous scenarios.
Dams are just one example.
Exactly. In the Alps and the Rockies, goats are drawn to old stone buildings, the concrete footings of bridges, and mountain tunnels where mineral salts slowly seep to the surface.
But the most dangerous collision course is our road networks.
Yes.
In mountain regions, human transportation grinds to a halt in the winter. To combat the ice, highway departments dump thousands of tons of heavy salt onto the asphalt.
And the herbivores quickly update their generational maps.
Right.
You end up with these incredibly dangerous situations where an entire herd of bighorn sheep or mountain goats will wander out onto a busy, winding mountain highway and aggressively lick the asphalt right in the middle of the lane.
It's terrifying for a driver coming around a blind curve at 50 miles an hour.
Oh, completely.
But for the goat, they've just stumbled onto the most concentrated, calorie-free mineral deposit they've ever seen. They become completely hyper-focused on the salt, ignoring the massive metal machines flying past them.
It completely disrupts their natural migratory patterns. Highway departments have to deploy highly specific chemical deterrents or build alternative artificial salt licks deep in the woods just to pull the herds away from the traffic zones.
It's a sobering reminder of how our invisible footprint alters the ecosystem. But to be fair, the human-animal exchange goes both ways.
That's true.
We're altering their ancient maps now, but for centuries, humans actively relied on those exact same maps to survive.
We did. Long before satellite imaging, LiDAR, or topographical maps, human survival in mountainous terrain depended on copying the goats.
Copying their homework.
Exactly. A shepherd in the Alps hundreds of years ago didn't just guess which way was safe. They would observe a herd traveling to a specific, seemingly inaccessible peak, and they would follow the hoof prints.
Literally letting the goats do the architectural surveying for them.
By tracing those routes, early humans discovered hidden mountain passes that avoided avalanches, they found secret alpine springs, and they mapped the safest ascents through deadly terrain. Those ancient goat trails became human footpaths, which became trade routes, which eventually were paved into the very roads we use today.
And today, our obsession with their movement has transitioned from shepherds looking for a mountain pass to literal space-age technology. I found this part of the sources absolutely wild.
It's my favorite part, honestly.
Right. Like while we're busy trying to build advanced artificial intelligence and conquer space, the world's leading robotics engineers are sitting in labs staring at footage of mountain goats looking for salt.
It is the cutting edge of biomimicry. For decades, robotics struggled immensely with quadrupedal movement on uneven terrain.
Because a robot is fundamentally rigid.
Yes. If a traditional robot steps on a rock that shifts, the sensor feedback loop takes too long to adjust, and the machine tips over.
Because the robot relies on static stability, whereas the goat relies on dynamic stability.
Exactly. Companies building highly advanced four-legged robots, the kind you see navigating disaster zones or inspecting dangerous industrial pipelines, are directly studying goat biomechanics to solve this.
That makes total sense.
They are analyzing the goat's low center of mass, but more importantly, they are studying that passive locking joint mechanism and the independent hoof placement.
They are trying to write algorithms that replicate a goat's proprioception, the body's ability to intuitively know where its limbs are in space without looking.
They are using reinforcement learning to train these machines to react to a crumbling rock edge the exact same way the dual material hoof and the nervous system of a goat reacts.
We are attempting to mechanically reproduce millions of years of evolutionary perfection.
And we still have a long way to go to build a machine as capable and efficient as a baby goat on a wet rock.
So what does this all mean? We've gone from a surreal, almost impossible piece of viral footage on an Italian dam into the cellular biology of electrolyte crashes, through the complex physics of hybrid hooves and fluid dynamic suction cups, all the way to modern robotics trying to decode the algorithms of nature.
It's quite a journey.
It really is. I think the biggest takeaway here is about framing. When we watch a mountain goat standing on an 80-degree cliff, we see an insane calculated risk. We think they are performing some heroic, gravity-defying stunt.
But to the goat, they aren't being brave. They are just living.
It's just a regular Tuesday.
And that realization forces a much deeper philosophical shift. We constantly judge the natural world by what feels safe, logical, and convenient to us. We assume our human baseline of reality is the universal baseline.
Right, because we evolved to thrive on flat ground, we assume flat ground is universally good.
But if a mountain goat views our comfortable, flat, predictable world as a terrifying danger zone, if their ultimate sanctuary is our ultimate terror, it makes you reconsider everything else.
It really does.
What other hidden wonders, mechanisms, or biological strategies in the natural world are we completely misunderstanding simply because we refuse to take off our human lenses?
That is an incredible thought to leave on. The next time you see a wild animal doing something that looks completely impossible, reckless, or bizarre, ask yourself, are they crazy, or are you just looking at the environment from the wrong angle? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your perspective, and we will catch you on the next one.